We're allowed to use those.
Yes.
Start growing.
Yeah, I think that's.
Trying to keep costs down so there's no barriers on entry and.
Yeah.
The estuary.
Okay, if everybody's ready, I guess we can go ahead and get going here.
All right, for folks online, do you want to give me a thumbs up or let me know if you can hear us in here?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can
All
hear you.
right, lots of thumbs up. Okay, thank you guys very much. Appreciate that. Just to make sure everybody is where they are supposed to be this afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. This is the Water Use Advisory Council. I'm Laura Campbell, one of your co-chairs, and as we usually do when we are in these meetings, knowing that there's a lot of folks online, we can't necessarily see everyone in the room. We'll go around the room and introduce everybody who's here in person, and then we'll use your online name that you have joined under to take attendance for the rest of the folks who are participating remotely. So Brian, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Hi, I'm Brian Burrows. I work with Michigan Trout Unlimited, one of the co-chairs, representing statewide angler research.
Dave Matura, Michigan Lakes and Streams Association, representing statewide riparian landowners.
Madison Caterberg here with Checo Solutions.
Mike Jugel with Eagle, filling in for Jim today.
I'm Lena Pappas. I'm the Groundwater Geologic Services Section Manager at Eagle.
Simon Doyle with the Office of Great Lakes of Eagle.
Jay Wesley, Michigan DNR Fisheries Division.
Dave Hamilton, Nature Conservancy.
Do you ever really retire from the Nature Conservancy though, or is it kind of like being a Marine and you're still a Marine?
You know, it's kind of like working for DEQ. Sometimes never end.
Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development.
Megan Napier, Casey Girls.
Welcome to HDR.
Doug Needham with the Aggregate Association.
Howard Reeves with the U.S. Geological Survey.
All right, let's go to the back of the room. That's you.
Claire Rose, Water Use Assessment Unit with Eagle.
Chevelle, Water Use Assessment Unit, trying to get a different perspective today.
Cindy Romolo with Eagle.
Andrew Barron with Eagle.
Yeah, Arnett, Eagle.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And Maddie, just to make sure you've got the folks who are participating online, anyone you need identified or phone number or anything?
Not currently, and then we take a list at the end here. So pretty much everything from this, so I have kind of a track sheet.
All right, sounds good. Okay, thanks, everybody. So Brian and I are counting. We do not see in-person quorum for this meeting. So as we do when we don't have in-person quorum, what we'll do is we'll take an informal request for any edits to the minutes from our last meeting, as well as today's agenda. We won't make those official until we have quorum to approve them, but we always like to try to keep up on that stuff while it's fresh in people's minds. So any requests to change or edit our minutes from last meeting? And if you're online, don't forget to unmute before you jump in. Seeing and hearing none. Okay. Any changes that need to be made to today's meeting agenda?
Well, I just have a question. One of the things we talked about earlier was talking about the water management districts user group. We're going to make that a topic of discussion. Obviously, it's not on today's agenda.
It's
It
right.
won't be today, but I just kind of wanted as a reminder that we should put that on the agenda sometime soon.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. I will reach out to Todd and their team and see what they'd like to put together and kind of timescale on it.
And I think what we're looking for is actually discussion.
Yeah, discussion among the group. Yep. I just want to make sure that they're present
Oh, yeah,
because there could be a lot of questions that come up to where we're all looking at each other going, and we need to have them there to be able to answer those questions.
Right.
So, yeah, good point. Thank you. Anything else for today's agenda? Being none, okay, and remember, folks, just keep this in mind, we'll do an official approval of the minutes and the agenda when we have in-person quorum. What we'll do now is we'll do the first of our two public comment periods. We try to stick to the first one being about agenda topics that are on today's meeting. We'll have a second public comment period at the end of today's meeting for folks to bring up whatever relevant water and water use issues or topics that they might want to bring up, but any public comment related to today's agenda. And again, if you're online, don't forget to unmute. Great. I am hearing none. So what I'm going to do at this point is shift things over to Brian, who is going to take the lead for us and launch into our committee chair reports.
All right, thank you. We're going to start with the Conservation and Efficiency Committee. Is Kelly who's giving it? Is it Simon or?
Yes,
Kelly?
it'll be me.
All right, great, Simon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mike. If you want to move to the next slide, please. Our committee, so is, you've noticed Emily Finnell and Kelly Turner, our co-chairs of this committee, are not able to attend today. So I'm here in their place. I'm Simon Balil. I work at the Office of the Great Lakes and usually attend all of the Water Conservation Efficiency Committee meetings, but last week I was away at that time. So I'm reporting from the notes that my colleagues graciously prepared for me. And so we went on our regular schedule last week because there's a lot happening right now with the committee. Our water conservation efficiency educators that were funded by the 2020 Foundation been a really busy duo this spring and are planning to be at many events this summer. And they've also one of the products that they're working on and sending out, I believe, on a weekly basis are irrigation recommendations, and they're using their listserv, they're using text messages to reach as many producers and operators as possible. And our mobile lab is up and running. And last time we were talking about it, it still needed to be wrapped and all that. It's up and going, a lot of already doing some work. And as I'm kind of alluding to, if you can go to the next slide, please. We will all get a chance to see it in person in a demo prior to the August 11 meeting of the Water Use Advisory Council. Michigan State University Extension is really pleased to invite us to their dairy facility for the demo, and then we'll use the classroom for the meeting. And so I don't think we have it yet, but we'll have a link for registration. Obviously, it's free and open. We just need a head count and help with lunch counts and dietary restrictions and making sure all communications go to the right folks. So it's gonna be an opportunity to get a demonstration of the mobile lab, meet with the educators, be there as well, and then we'll have our Water Use Advisory Council meeting on site. It's just south of campus here, Michigan State. So it's gonna be a great opportunity to see all that in person and see all this work that we've been talking about for so many meetings happening live. So it's, I'm excited about it. I hope all of you will join us. We'll make sure the link for registration gets to all members and interested parties once it's done through MSU. So if you go to the next slide, please. So the mobile lab, as I said, is active. They've had, you can see on the map kind of the geographic locations of where they've had interventions. So far, they've done 14 evaluations, and then there's been a retrofit, and there has been a post retrofit evaluation of the system. And you can see also the stats that what they found in the pre-test was irrigation uniformity from 70 to 88%. So some of them meant fair bit of work to be done. And there's all things that this extension we'll be able to talk about more when we do meet in a couple months. And so the common issues that they've observed so far were malfunctioning individual sprinklers, and pressure regulators. And thanks to Yunsuk and Janine for providing this information. And final slide for our committee. There's a lot here because we are very active these days. It's really exciting and refreshing to see our community really kind of stepping up based on everybody's expertise. So the first subgroup we've created is the one that is going to be updating the 2022 recommendation with focus on securing sustainable long-term funding for our agricultural water conservation educators in our technical assistance program. The goal is to demonstrate that these positions really benefit not just farmers, but also Michigan's water resources, communities, and compliance with broader water management objectives, including Great Lakes stewardship. That'll be in our recommendation, and we've got a group working on this right now. And that same group is working on trying to find, because of the delay between our recommendations and actions from the legislature that we've seen in the past, we're a group, and I say we because I've been part of that group, looking to find what we like to call gap funding to make sure that we can continue to work until hopefully our recommendation gets acted upon. And so we've been reaching out to a variety of different potential sources and an interest in Great Lakes protection, and it really helps when we have good results that we can showcase and when we're trying to pitch that. So it's been a really active group. Continuing, we've got our group that's working on our kind of revising and creating a specific water conservation website. That group met on June 3rd, and there's several takeaways from that meeting. In general, that the website creation is part of a larger project that's already ongoing to kind of renovate all of Eagle's water use program related content on the web. There's other states and organizations that have websites that we've been looking at, or that group, excuse me, has been looking at. And group members are working to identify and prioritize target content and site features. And they're going to meet again in July to kind of put together the content and structure ideas to really formulate how the website's going to be. And then we'll be working with Eagle's website team to put that all together. The next subgroup or webinar, which only has one quick line on the slide, but they've been also meeting to find the right platform usually, or excuse me, trying to use an existing platform to create webinars that have to do with water conservation. The Catalyst Communities Program has a series of webinars that's been well known and used by similar target audiences. So we'll be using that program to create this new webinar series. And the goal of that would be to educate local decision makers over the fundamentals of water conservation and efficiency regarding wastewater and water treatment, stormwater, non-potable water reuse, and recharging aquifers. So those will be, I would assume, several webinars, but we can't touch on all of these in a reasonable amount of time. And then the group is going to keep meeting to finalize the scope and start planning those webinars later this year. And then lastly, on the data and mapping group, a lot of you, probably most of you in the room, have received an email from Sarah Pearson to participate in discussion and on making recommendations for continued geologic and aquifer mapping across the state in preparation for the report to legislature at the end of the year. If you're interested and did not get that email, either let Sarah or myself know. We'll make sure to. And the last thing for our committee that I want to plug, because we are right in the middle of Great Lakes and Freshwater Week, that's on June 14th. This year's theme is protecting the Great Lakes sustains us, which has many meanings in the industries that we all work on. And there's a link to our events press release. Once I'm done talking, I'll log in and put it in the chat. And so lots happening. Lots of exciting activities, and most importantly, time-wise, once we get the link, make sure to let us know if you're coming on August 11th.
Go ahead with questions.
I just want to say thank you for setting up that field. It looks excellent.
Oh, I'm going to accept the thanks, but deflect them to my MSU colleague who's not here.
Excellent idea.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, I was invited to talk at the water reuse workshop yesterday that was sponsored by Great Lakes Commission.
Okay.
Great Lakes Commission commissioners did a policy memorandum last fall on pursuing water reuse, especially for non-potable uses, landscaping and irrigation and cooling water and stuff like that. And I checked this morning when I got in the office, it turns out the US Senate has some language about promoting water reuse. So I know you guys are really busy, but if I could throw another topic on the pile, maybe for next year to discuss and learn more about water reuse, it would have some overlap potentially with, Great Lakes Compact, thresholds and have to be, go through the water, registration process if it gets up to be a high enough volume. So it's like a hot topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the risk of stealing my own thunder from later on when I talk about the Great Lakes Compact meetings, it is going to be an agenda for the science team next week. So different group, but similar topic. Yeah. And if there are particular resources that you found really interesting, please send them ways that we can. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, anybody see any questions online? Okay. All right. We'll move on. Thank you, Simon. Data committee. I will give a brief update, but why don't we go ahead and start and see if there's any updates from Sydney or Howard about some of the HEMI activity of recent.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to give an update. There were a couple of slides that we didn't send in. Yep, there we go. So wanted to share with the council that the airborne electromagnetic survey was completed. So it was completed as of June 2nd last week. Image there that you're seeing on the map, those are showing you the different floor lines of the different days that they flew. So you can see the actual flight lines that they have flown. They flew a total of just over 14,000 line kilometers. So it's a really large area. I think it was really successful based on what the proposed plan was that we had. We also recently, supposed to be another survey, added flight lines over Algoma and Sparta townships at the request of those townships to support their potential municipal water supply system development. So you can see on the north end there of that map, there's a couple of grouping of green lines that are north of the outlined survey area. So that's Algoma and Sparta township. So they were surveyed as well. So yeah, and I think there might be another slide there with some images. Yeah, so the survey crew, SkyTims took some really nice photos as they were out doing the survey. So you can see the helicopter there towing the beneath it. And there are some other ones that they took. Again, the actual equipment itself did not have any video or photography capabilities attached to it. This would be, from the pilots taking photos. So you can see them flying over one of the river corridors. And then in that photo there on the left, that's as they're starting to take off. I think those are the, yep. And then we've got the a sample of the data. So this is preliminary data. So it's, not to be distributed at this point in time, but wanted to share it with the council. So you can see some of the profiles that we're developing from the preliminary data. So you'll see the profiles there on the map, the aerial map on the left, and then kind of what that electrical resistivity data is looking like on the right-hand side. And so you can start to make out the up at the top, you've got higher electrical resistivity in the reds and then lower electrical resistivity in the blues. And so you can see some of those sands and gravels again up at the top. And then as you move deeper, you can start to make out areas like clays or what we'll continue to look for is like top of bedrock with some of the data and continue to use that to identify some of those things as well. Howard, did you want to add anything related to that?
No, the geophysicist team in Denver were really happy with the data. They thinking it was looking good, and they're excited about digging in and doing some more interpretations. As Cindy said, those little gaps, that's like they go over a power line or something like that, then it interferes with the signal. So the first thing that they do with the preliminary data is they go in and clean all that stuff, those up to look at this. And they look at it kind of rolling with the flight. So if there was a big problem, they'd be able to talk to the pilots and say, we had an issue in this area. But now the Sky 10 team is cleaning up the final delivery and they'll get it to the group in Denver and then they'll do the real version, not the quick one.
Any questions from anybody about that part? So far, so smooth? No
Yeah.
major logistical problems or?
No,
Yeah, no, for the geophysicists out of Denver said, it was one of the smoothest surveys that they had done to date. So, we didn't receive any, significant complaints while it was going on. And, I think the outreach, thank you to Laura and others that helped us with the outreach. I think that was a big help to get the word out there. So I think, overall, it seemed to have gone really smoothly. So.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion among the farmers, most of whom have been out frantically planting, once the rains kind of settled out a little bit. Lots of people took pictures, lots of people was like, oh yeah, the helicopter went over my house. So yeah, I think in general, people were really interested to see the results.
Yeah.
yeah, we had some good people. We had an open house
Mhm.
day and the only bummer was it was too windy for the helicopter, so we just got to see the poop on the ground. But a number of people came to that, with different concerns and they were able to talk through it and. Yeah, I mean, our colleague in Denver, Burke, watches the Facebook pages, because they tend to blow up and somebody would put in there, the black helicopters are over the area and then like the next comment came in, no, that was just Eagle and USGS helping with groundwater resources. And we saw those kind of things come a couple times, so it really was great the work that Cindy and the Eagle Communications team and working with you guys, getting the word out really helps.
Brent's got his hand up or had his hand up. I think he just took it down.
Brent, if
I
you-
had my hand up to say the exact thing Howard just said, so, yeah.
Okay.
Great. Good. Love it when a lot of preparation results in deservedly smooth implementation. Good work. Good work. The data committee, other parts. We had a meeting yesterday. We're gonna be setting up another one for a couple of weeks from now. Largely, the lay of the land still remains about the same. We are trying to continue to see if our time overlap with this report and the implementation of several projects, data analysis, the gaps, the network analysis that you've been hearing about in HEMI, some with our long-term data gap planning, past recommendation that MGS is doing. Both of those are set to, sort of come to final conclusion at the end of the year. And so we continue to try to figure out whether we can get enough look preliminarily to see whether there's sound, well-justified recommendations about future data collection that we can make in time for this report, or whether we're just, maybe not able to get enough details and review time to pull that off. So that remains kind of the focus going forward. Talked as a committee a couple times that over the next, month or two, we're going to be asking a lot of those folks who are leads and involved in implementing past recommendations to try to write up some summary reports, just so that we can have that portion for our accountability, good accountability measures within our report, biannual report. So those are big. And then we had some discussion about the Prairie River, which I won't talk about now because we're going to have that on the agenda, but we had some good, very healthy discussion about that yesterday. And the possibility of a new recommendation related to our ability to capture stream flow data from various sources. And probably take us 2 months, but maybe by the August meeting, we'll be able to pull off, giving you a first glimpse, maybe not. Maybe it'll be September, but in essence, there's a lot of people who do collect stream flow data. For a variety of reasons, it can be hard for that to get captured and integrated inside the USGS database. But it can still be very highly valuable data that took a lot of time and money to create, that could be of great utility to other people. So we're looking at a recommendation development to recommend that the state provides a means to capture that information, including metadata on it, so people can evaluate its strengths or limitations for different uses. I think that's about it for the data committee for right now. Any questions about overall stuff? Sounds good. We'll keep moving to the models committee.
All right, so we've been reviewing the work from the trans probability modeling and the update to the transmissivity, and those are two tough words to put together. Sentence, sortivity study. There's some interaction between the two, between the trans probability and transmissivity, that there's some overlap as to how it's going to affect our recommendation. We're still having a problem getting it all together at one place at one time, so we can start digesting it and coming up with a recommendation. We've got some general ideas kind of framed out as how we think it'll go, but we need to look at the actual information. And once we get it, I think we'll be able to come up with recommendations fairly quickly that we'll be able to bring to the council. I plan on having a final presentation of Michigan Hydraulic Framework probably in August or September. And that'll be kind of like, here it is, this is what it does kind of thing. It's going through testing now. When we bring it there, there's still maybe a few things that need to be done, but it should be very close to being final. And I think in a place for us to be able to look at it and ask questions and see how it operates. And we're looking forward to that. We restarted the SSR technical work group that had taken a too long hiatus, but we're back underway. With not met such a long time that I actually queried all the members, say, hey, are you still interested in pursuing this? And then everyone was still interested in going, which I was glad, because I do think it is an important group. I think we've got some important work to do. And so we've got that going on. So I'm happy with that. Let's see here. The main thing we're looking at right now is a question that came up on analytical models and how they handle intermittent schedules. And so we're digging into that. And the question we want to figure out is, okay, we understand that this happens with analytical models, but what does that mean as far as the program, and does it cause a problem or not? So we'll be digging into that and trying to figure out what's going on. And if it is causing an issue, we want to try to figure out what mitigation be required to straighten out. So we are digging into that. The last thing which I'll talk about is the stream flow depletion study. That is underway. That was our last report's main recommendations, about $1.2 million worth of work. Very, very pleased to see that getting going. USGS and MSU are the principal people working on it. There will be some work that's contracted out. Some of the monitoring and field work will be, or I should say, monitoring and some of the well drilling and that kind of stuff will be. And we're working with USGS in Wisconsin as well. So we had a meeting that was actually in person, which was wonderful. We spread it out over a couple of days, and it was nice to actually be together, talk about things. So we covered a lot of really good information. We really want to have the agricultural and irrigation people there. So Laura had agreed to be part of the work group. Young Suk Dung also had agreed to be on the work group, but couldn't make the meeting. So we'll have to catch him up with that. In our discussion, we talked about, it might be a good idea to get somebody from like Valley, the irrigation equipment company. So we're going to see if we can get someone from Valley on it as well.
And John McGee did agree.
Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent. And then the final piece of the puzzle is that once we choose where we are going to do the study, we're going to want to have one or two farmers. One for sure is the landowner that we're dealing with, and maybe another farmer in the area, but we want to have some farmers on this work group as well. And so I think we will have really good representation from the ag side, which I think is critical for the success of this study. So some of the things that we talked about, just to give you a sense of it, it was the first one. So I mean, we're just basically trying to lay out what we're going to do and who's going to do what, and those kinds of things. But it's one of the things that was made very clear is that, we're going to look at a number of different models, and like there's no sacred fellows. We want to see how do they work and what circumstances do they work well, work better, and make sure that we understand these models, and it's the quote, and I don't remember who said this, but everything is on the table as long as it doesn't violate physics. That might have been him who said that. Let's see here. We're looking at 2 experimental sites, one unconfined and one semi-confined, which will be very, very representative of what we see in Michigan. We'll be looking for controlled pump tests. We'll be looking at here on budget monitoring. So we really want to get a handle on what is the water balance. So I think it will be critical as we look at streetflow depletion. It's not just the depletion, it's in the context of the whole water budget. So we'll be digging into that. The location, if you go back, if you remember the map where all these aerial some stuff was done, we'd like it to be one of those areas. We'd also like it to be part of what is being done in the HEMI, the large scale model that's being done. So we'd like to kind of have it in those areas, but we're looking for a certain size of streams, certain size of watersheds. So there's a lot of moving parts. So we're still trying to get down to what exactly it's going to look like, and then start looking for an area geographic. They're looking for owners that'll work with us. We've kind of went through what are the models that are going to be used, and so a range of models that will be used that have to serve different purposes. So they'll be good to look at those and how they work in this this environment for the study. We will be using the ModFlow inset, which has been part of the discussion of the Michigan Hydrologic Framework. It's one of the ideas of the Michigan Hydrologic Framework should take a larger scale model and use that to set boundaries for a creation of a smaller model. So we'll use that in this application as well. So that's one of the reasons we want to have the USGS model, a larger regional model in place along with the AEM data. So that's going to give us a really good setting to and do a more detailed model within that site. Let's see here. Part of the goal is to identify when each solution is appropriate, especially the analytical solutions. And we're simplifying assumptions may cost accuracy and where improvements might be needed or where we might need to modify them. So we will be looking at that. Jeremiah Asher from MSU has talked to us before about some of his recharge quantification work. We're going to try to incorporate some of that into to this, which fits very well with the overall water budget concepts. So I think that's about the level I want to do. If you have questions, I can answer the questions, or you can just wait for more updates. But that, I think, gives you an idea of all the things we're trying to work on, and a lot of moving parts. Once we get the site identified, I think we'll ask the group to come in and give you an update on it as to why the site was chosen and more specific plans for monitoring and how it's going to be done. Questions or comments from anybody who's there?
Yeah, well, Dave, I do have a question to follow up, not on the stream depletion study, but on just the brief mention you made of some of the other work going on, including the trying to update transmissivity with the big statewide.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I want to make sure.
That's probably list.
Right, yeah. I wanted to make sure I didn't misspeak on that. I still have an outstanding question on that because the modeling that was done was based off of basically the layer around the aquifers themselves and not all the way up to the surface where we would be looking for a stream impact. And I'm concerned that if we don't take that into consideration, that we're going to end up with transmissivity values that aren't actually more accurate than the ones that we've got now.
I think that's one of the things that Anthony is looking back at again. And I think
Okay.
that's why we're having the delays, because that's one of the things he's probably looking at.
Okay, okay,
And if it's not probably delays, more to ask that question again.
okay. All right. So I should hold this question and ask it again. All right. You got Todd on the line. He's asking.
Go ahead, Todd.
Thank you, Dave. I'm not been sitting on the group that you're talking about doing the individual site studies at. But I've gotten a couple calls from different growers already about that. What is your messaging to the growers as to why to participate in that? Because from the countryside, there's a high level of hesitation to participate and support that effort. So what is the sales pitch, so to speak, or what is the benefits to the growers as a number of us start to get these calls about participating in that? How are you recommending that we answer that question as to what's the benefit for them?
I think the benefit is that we are looking at models in the system that we are using, and we're trying to compare it against realities, which is what everybody always wants. And so we will be gathering data at the same time that we're creating models and seeing how this all works together. So I think this will be very useful for the farmer irrigator, part of it, to actually see how data gathered on their farm or neighboring farm is being used and how it works with figuring out what the overall hydrologic system is, and then how stream flow depletions fit into that. So I think we're all of us, everybody's participating in this, looking at it, this is a learning exercise. It's something that we expect to push on the data, to push on the models, and we need to see how it all works together. I think it's everybody's interest to participate and to be part of the analysis and the solution. So that, let's say that the farmers decided, well, I'm going to hold my information because I don't trust you guys. That's just going to leave us with a huge hole that really shouldn't be there. That if we really want to do a service to people and accurately evaluate what is the stream flow depletion, what are the, when or when not are we going to have an adverse resource impact because of the cumulative stream flow depletion, we need all the data that's available, and we need to get it into the process and use it. So this, I think, is a good place for people to have an experience of seeing how it all works together under a well-funded study, so that we'll be able to get the monitoring done, we'll be able to put in wells, we'll be able to do the modeling. So I think it's really an ideal situation for involvement, and there's a no-lose proposition here. I mean, I think everybody gains from this.
So the pushback that I've gotten so far from a couple folks has been, how is this different than the work that was done with the original SMF group or the Fawn River model or the 3-year Cass County pilot model? The Cass County model and the work that was done over that 3 years, to a number of them, seems very, very similar for about the same price tag, but covering a bit larger of an area. And I'm not trying to be difficult. These are just real questions that are coming in. So how do you distinguish between, because a lot of those goals that you just stated were the exact same goals that were stated in that project. And so there's still hesitation there, and I think understandably so.
Well, I think it's unfortunate the way the Cass County thing went, and I guess others say I think it was unfortunate where it went. I'm not sure I can say much else about that. I really wish I had worked out better. As far as the Prairie River, the purpose of that was to try to look at stream classification, which is an entirely different question than what we're looking at.
It wasn't the Prairie River, Dave. It was the Fawn River model, which was also turned over as part of the Cass County pilot with a lot of the same information. And the question is really, how do we make that? If a grower calls me, how are you suggesting or recommending that we draw the distinction between them so that they are supportive and accepting of it?
The Fawn I'm not familiar with, so I can't.
I think the biggest difference is that this is really not so wide scale. It's very much more field specific and much more intensely instrumented on that single field. So including a flux tower to get at the ET. So try to get the whole water budget and not try to tackle the whole, a big county or a big watershed. Because by sacrificing the intensity of monitoring at the site scale, there was a lot of room for interpretation. But if we can, I guess I'd say over instrument the stream. So several, an upstream stream gauge and a downstream stream gauge, and measurements in between those of stream flow. And then the ET monitoring, soil moisture monitoring, and piezometers, really focused on what's happening at the field. I think that's the biggest difference between the studies you mentioned. And the goal really to get people out there, trying to close the water budget. And then the one other part that Dave mentioned, we would be doing aquifer tests in the non-growing season. That would be thought of as a really long, like an overly long one, to really try to capture the full response of potential stream flow depletion. And the final thing is really targeting a field that has a really small stream next to it, so that there's a better chance of being able to measure the impact of a single well, and not have to rely on cumulative impacts from many wells. So yeah, I guess those, I think those are the big differences.
So I would highly recommend that for this to be successful, that most of the growers aren't going to sit and have the ability to follow a lot of what both Dave and Howard have said, and draw those distinctions. I'm going to give a really strong recommendation that it's more of a bulleted list of distinct differences that are much, much easier to understand and communicate. There's some hurdles that are going to have to be accomplished to get that to be widely accepted. And it's just the reality of it. So not being difficult on it, I'm just saying this is some of the lessons from the past, and it's going to need to be really, really clearly articulated how this is different and why this is better. So that's just 2 cents for what it's worth.
Thanks. No, it's helpful.
Yeah, I think it's helpful too. Thank you.
Brent, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple pieces to what Dave and Howard have said. I think one of the other unique things about this project is, as they've mentioned, trying to get growers involved in not just things on the back end or sort of once the project's complete, but at the very beginning. So they're engaged sort of from the planning stage on through data collection, data analysis. And in addition to doing sort of this concentrated experiment to really look at what potential interactions between a stream and a pumping well are, there's also the opportunity to then do some continued monitoring over a growing season where the operation is all dictated by the grower, and sort of to address some of the questions that have been raised before about some field experiments where, well, you've tested it under this condition, but that's not really how we operate. And we've also discussed among the project team really trying to make ourselves available to have these conversations, with the participants and other stakeholders about sort of the science and the motivation in detail, like holding back project staff time to actually do direct communication. So I don't want to speak for the rest of our project group. I mean, we'd also talk to Laura Campbell about getting her engagement with outreach and stakeholders. So I guess if you have people that really have questions, we can talk a little bit about getting some direct communication with them and starting to break down some of those barriers to understanding how this might be different or useful. But I think the idea of creating sort of that bullet pointed list of how this is different from some of the previous efforts here and in other places to understand this question is a good one. So thanks, Todd.
Quick comment, things to add. In that vein, Eagle is here to support whatever communication would be necessary to help folks understand the project that we're deciding to undertake. And then I actually had a comment on Laura's comment earlier, which, I was waiting for the other conversation to kind of evolve. Relative to that transmissivity piece, I think that if you're talking about taking an effective transmissivity for the entire, vertical column of available data points, right?
Mhm.
That almost would then work as an alternative to maybe using a different analytic solution. Right? Like, so if you're gonna use, say, the Warden Low or the Hunt 2003 solution, you wouldn't necessarily want a fully average transmissivity value, right? Because essentially you would then represent that as two individual data points as opposed to just one.
Mhm.
So I think maybe that's something worth considering when you're identifying which path you want to choose, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that does make it tough, but I appreciate that Anthony has taken another look at it. And, you know, because really, the big thing that I'm interested in is how can we get as close to reality as is possible with the systems that we have, right?
I just wanted to close the loop on that.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that.
I think it'll open, I think that loop will open back up. If, Jay's still on our agenda, yesterday represent a variable item with like one measure, and come up with representativeness, or do you have multiple measures and do splitting or lumping? And that was a very lively
Exciting.
discussion outcome from that. So, talking about a vertical column versus a river, and how do you fix that?
Yeah.
So
That's a
it might
fun
come
one.
back up.
The transmissivity that well sees is from the water table down though.
Mhm,
The well doesn't know it's above the water table,
mhm.
so you don't need to include between the water table and the land surface. It could be solid gravel,
I
but
know,
well
no,
would
that's
know
not the point. I just like now I'm in the rabbit hole a little bit, right? Like if you're talking about the water table, then does that mean like the unconsolidated water table? Would that mean the potentiometric surface?
That's right.
Right, like,
For
Yeah,
combined-
yeah,
no,
Well, no, it's
This
for the
is
combined system,
really-
it would just be the confining layer down.
yeah, right, yeah, anyways, sorry. I know, I'm there with you.
I'm just saying that we don't need to worry necessarily about the ground, the land surface down, like through the soil zone and then unconsolidated part of the package.
okay.
If we try to incorporate that, then that might bias your.
Is that what you meant?
Basically, I just want to make sure that before we go and change a major portion of how we model the entire state, that we understand that we're actually making it better and not making it worse. Is where I'm kind of going with that. So I want to make sure that we're answering the question of how much of the, from the well screen, up through confining layers or up to a stream bed, do we need to have in there in order to make sure that we're representing transmissivity well through the state? And so definitely, yeah, confining layers, that's gonna be, a hard cap. If you've got up to the potentiometric surface, that's gonna be a cap in an unconfined system. For a semi-confined, I don't know what that looks like, but I guess I want to make sure that we're thinking about that before we just go, yeah, let's just update the numbers, because we want to update numbers. Stand up.
Todd, you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to chip in just a minute for those of us that have sat in on those meetings and talked. This stuff is old hat and we can kind of get on the same page, but I would assume that most of the people in the room have not been a part of those conversations. The real crux of the matter was that the work that was done by Anthony before was looking at a single layer within the whole, all the layers that you found at any one site. Whereas the MyWatt looks at all of the layers and takes an average based on textures. So, most sites around Michigan have more than 3 layers that are present in the well logs. And so the main difference was that Anthony's work was looking at just the aquifer that was being pumped from, typically the deeper one. And that wasn't the same methodology or the same, we weren't looking at the same things. So we were comparing transmissivity estimated for just an aquifer to transmissivity that was estimated by averaging all of the layers in every well log, or at least representative for that watershed. So the point very simply was when we had that original discussion, we were not comparing apples to apples. They were very different methodologies. And the one assuming the average transmissivity is what was currently being used in the MyWatt screening tool. So, and Lena's right, in the sense that we don't want to use the average for every single layer for using multiple layer models. However, a lot of the well logs show there's more than 3 layers, which is the most complicated model that we have, is only 3 layers. So there's still got to be some averaging or some assumptions that go in. So it gets technical and confusing. I think if you don't really understand what's behind it, simply put, it's evaluating just an aquifer transmissivity in Anthony's case versus evaluating the average transmissivity of all the layers encountered in the well log in the MyWatt system. And so I think there's some work being done to try to bring those two closer to each other.
Thanks. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to go.
Any other questions about the models committee update? Okay, let's move on. Or Doug.
Yeah, I actually was in the process and looking, scheduling a meeting a little bit ago and I fell through. So I will put that on the top of the agenda and we will get one on the books. So.
Yep, so as folks are getting ready to make recommendations, if if you had, again, if you have thoughts, if you have early drafts, if you want to, anything that you want to send to us so that we can start working through it, we can start putting that together with the report, and we'll want to make sure that as we schedule that meeting, we've got the folks from Eagle in the room to be able to kind of go through, all right, now with our gigantic mess of a spreadsheet of what are we spending on what projects and what state are they at, that we can get that as close to on target as we can, and then can report that out to the legislature.
That's good. Sounds good. You'll be busy soon enough.
Yes.
Don't have to start earlier than required, but you'll be plenty busy. Excellent. Let's go ahead and move into the Eagle update section, agenda item number 7, and we will start off with Jim and the water use assessment unit update.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be me this time.
All right.
We weren't sure if he was gonna make it back, so. Yeah, I'll just go through our year-to-date metrics real quick, and then we just got one quick personnel note. So for 2026 so far, we've gotten in 127 watt registrations and 87 SSRs. And of those 87 SSRs, 73 have been authorized, 11 were retracted for one reason or another, and then 3 are still pending. And to break those down even further, of the ones that were authorized, 2 came back as Zone A, 18 as Zone B, 36 as Zone C, and then we had 2 baseline replacements, 15 dewaterings. And then again, 3 are pending and 11 were retracted for various reasons. Our timeliness here, our average, this kind of shows the breakdown by category. So we have them split into admin, desktop, and technical. Our average is at 13.67 days. So we're a bit over our 10-day statutory deadline. And then on the next slide, this is just kind of visualizing it in a different way, kind of showing our timeliness compared to previous years. So the top graph shows the average number of days from receipt by year, and then the bottom is the percentage that have been completed within that 10 business days. So we're a little bit down from last year, but more or less still how we have in the last 5 or 6 years. Moving on to some other metrics, we've had 3 permit requests come in. The first one was submitted in error and retracted almost immediately, but the other 2 are still pending review. We've had 9 drink water pre-screenings. 1 came back in Zone A, 1 Zone B, 2 baseline replacements, and 5 of them are still under review. 87 compliance communications, which 45 were revised registrations, 28 were installation verifications, 2 were water use reporting issues, 9 were after the fact registrations, and then 3 were missing pump information requests. And then just one quick personnel note, Garrett Link left Eagle about a month ago, so we've got 1 vacant geologist position in the unit now.
One question on the compliance communications, about what % you get back that everything satisfied you? You sent out a letter, they respond back and take care of the issues.
I'm gonna deflect that to Hannah, since she's the one that deals with compliance
Oh.
issues, most of them,
99%.
yeah.
That's a good number.
Are you allowed, to just super generally mention anything about the two pending permit level? 327 permit ones, like what type of use is it, where in the state, just general?
Yeah, so we've got one of them that's gonna go up for public notice here any day now. And that's for, dewatering for a wastewater treatment plant. And then the other one is, we're waiting to hear back from some more information, so that hasn't gone up to public notice yet, but that's for a, sandy gravel quarry.
Any other questions about that section of the update?
Lena, would this be a good time to talk a little bit about the township meeting that you and Adam and I attended? You know, just kind of to address some citizen concerns, and I don't know if this is the same gravel and sand dewatering request that's under review or not. I thought it wasn't, but
I don't think that it is.
but just related to Eagle activities in the water use program. I thought it might be good to update the group on kind of what that whole visit was for.
Sure. So, you know, Eagle and Farm Bureau had a chance to go speak with some concerned folks down in, gosh, that was just on the border of Hillsdale County, and Laura, please help me.
Moscow Township.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. I was following the Google prompts all the way there.
Yep.
And so we had a chance to speak with them about the water availability in their neck of the woods, right? They had a series of lakes with a bunch of homes around them and some previously artesian wells that had since stopped flowing. There were some large volume water users in that area, along with a sand and gravel mine that was actually both of those located up gradient inside of a water management area that was actually classified as a zone A, I believe. You know, they just were trying to understand maybe why there had been a change in the local hydrology and the available water and why things that had previously been flowing were no longer doing so. We took it as an opportunity to really go down into the weeds, right, with everyone relative to explaining to them the geology and the hydrogeology that was present in their environment. And just help them talk through some of their concerns and questions that they've had relative to what was actually going on. We've since had a little bit of follow-up, actually, Laura. I don't know if you want to add anything else, but we did end up sharing that presentation with a few folks that had reached out to get a little bit more information. But beyond that, I don't think we've actually had too much follow-up.
Yeah, no, we're still working on getting that actual mining authorization from the county. We're working back and forth between the county and the township. Because we'd said, you know, look, we will try to find a copy of this permit. We know that Eagle issues, you know, the water permits, the air permits, but the actual sand and gravel authorization comes from the local government. So my excellent intern who's actually on today, Sarah Damon, is digging into that, and she's going to see what she can find to help out those residents. Lena, I appreciate that update, and I really just wanted to bring it up to kind of emphasize, you know, the importance of the partnership and the outreach and addressing people's concerns. And that, you know, folks who are hearing other concerns around the countryside or who have questions. I mean, I think it's a really good opportunity for folks on this council, you know, as well as folks, you know, on Eagle's staff to be able to get themselves out there and to be able to talk about this program so that it's less mysterious for everyone.
I thought the meeting overall went really well. You know, we had some folks that were pretty adamant about the concerns that they had, but I think by the end of that meeting, they were in a better place. And then we were able to share some of that detailed information. And actually, we're still working internally. Actually, Ashley is helping to support that in Jim's program, inside of Jim's group. to come up with some additional detailed maps of the type of available water that's in the area and the geology, right? Kind of sticking in that vein. So
Mhm.
I think it was good. Actually, I kind of enjoyed it, even though I was dying. of Sweat the whole time. It was
Yeah.
good.
They only had room in the firehouse to put us up, so there were no air-conditioned conference rooms for that day.
It was very warm.
So I have a question. So in general though, was this because of lake drawdowns or were there wells running
No,
dry?
it was
or-
artesian wells essentially, I think was the primary, and then they had to replace a few wells, but I mean, the wells that they ended up having to replace were with it seemed like all within 20 feet of the ground surface. And, they were just, they had had a longstanding, condition there where those wells were sufficient and they were flowing, right? And something had changed and they were wondering as to whether or not it was the aggregate mine or the other large quantity users in the area. And given the zone classification, we had suggested that that's not likely the case, that the large volume water users were the ones that could potentially be impacting those wells. And then also with them being on the down gradient side of that sand and gravel mine, it also didn't appear that they were likely the folks that were actually causing that impact, just from the reality that the down gradient side of an aggregate mine usually sees flooding, right? Like there's gonna be flooding on that down gradient side, and any reduction in available water actually happens on the up gradient side. And with those two conditions, we were then left with the third potential option, which is the climatic changes, right? We're coming down off of a pretty big high for water availability statewide, and as that kind of settles back into a more stable routine or a stable water balance for the area, it's just they're in an area that's had seen drought over the last couple of years, and so that seemed like at the time the most likely source of the wells potentially no longer being flowing. But at the end of the day, we're still looking into it, and if we find more information, we'll be able to provide that at that time.
Small tangent, small world, but would you mind sending me that presentation?
Sure.
Because I've actually had a group of members that have, are right there, that have been complaining to me, going, why would our big duck marsh be lower than we've seen it in 30 years, but like the last 5 years? And so they were asking me questions too. So you just mentioned lakes and artesian wells. There's
Yeah.
like right where you guys happen to break,
Well,
up,
yeah.
there's like marsh concerns too, so.
Yeah, well, and and that's the thing is I mean, I think a lot of the residents were, they walked away with there's something happening to your wells, certainly. But whatever is happening does not appear to be due to the sand and gravel operation, because of the geology, because of the location, because of the work that Eagle did to be able to look into it. So really that answering that additional question of, okay, so we know what it's not, then what actually is it? I think would be really interesting to dig into.
Now, Brian, that marsh is low even this spring.
Is it?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Oh, I haven't talked to them this spring to
I'm
ask
just
them
kinda
whether it's
curious.
refilled.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
Right after 7 inches of rain in April.
Right, we have
Yeah.
had a tremendous amount of
Yeah.
water lately in this spring.
Yeah.
Just
Coming off
thinking.
pretty significant drought though.
I haven't thought about it for a while, but
Yeah.
since you guys brought it up and put a pin right on that exact place, I'll, thank you. All right, unless there's other questions for that, we will move on to Simon and the Great Lakes Compact Council update.
Yes, thank you. Shorter update than I spoke earlier. Just going in chronological order, Lena and Emily participated in a project team meeting for the Water Demand and Water Forecast Project that's led by Dr. Drew Grunwald at the University of Michigan with several other universities. That was a few weeks ago. And then the regional body and compact council semi-annual meetings are taking place next week in Cleveland, Ohio. Emily and Lena will be there to represent Michigan. Right?
And Jim too.
And Jim too, that's right. Wasn't supposed to, I guess, but we'll be there. Yep. I didn't know about all that when I wrote my notes. The science team will meet earlier in the week, June 16, 17. We'll research or discuss, the research that's been done on the water demand, water forecasts. We'll also get a presentation about water reuse from a group out of Ohio. That's what I was thinking, Howard, when you said earlier. And then there'll also be discussion about data centers. And then the public meetings of the regional body and compact council will be on June 18. Those are public, you can listen to them. I suggest if you're interested to listen to the first one. There's a lot of repetition in the second one, they go one after the other. Link in the chat as well for those, but always interesting to see what's going on at the regional level. I feel like they're becoming more and more interesting every single time, so that's kind of a short update on activities regarding the compact.
Any questions for Simon? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to Nina and some project updates.
Okay. All right, well, so as everyone is aware, there's been about, oh gosh, I want to say $26.5 million over the last several years that has been put into the groundwater section for just the advancement of the groundwater science and research. You can see a breakdown by funding source there. So honestly, this is kind of like a prep for the future meeting of the implementation subcommittee in Field Link. But at the end of the day, this is the breakdown of each one of those funding sources, right? We had about 15,000 that was just part of the general fund that was given to Eagle by the administration, and then beyond that, the additional money that had come in as a result of the work of this committee. Oh, and it looks like it might have reformatted on me a little bit, but you kind of get the idea either way. Basically, these are the project categories as we've been trying to divide them. Ultimately, what I was trying to show on this slide that got a little messed up is that the monitoring data and collection networks really feed into each one of those other subcategories of projects, right? So you have the data structure integration and analytics, modeling, assessment, and scientific research, water conservation, and then the water withdrawal and impact assessment subcategories. And each one of those has a suite of actual projects that we've been working on supporting as we try to align each one of these individual facets of the research. Sorry. So just to kind of, I don't know what happened to these slides. I'm so sorry. Just to kick it off, I mean, we just had several presentations over the last couple of meetings where we've dived into the back end of what's going into the hydrologic enhancement for Michigan study, or the HEMI study. That includes the stream gauge network, monitoring well network, the regional flow model, and then the AEM data. Ultimately, all of that work is really focused on supporting Michigan's ability to fully conceptualize both surface water and groundwater conditions throughout the state. One of the things I did want to mention that I might ask Sydney for a little bit of support on is that recently we've been working with some folks internally, both in the information management division and then also actually with the DNR to align our streamline database and then be able to share that information over with the federal partners so that then we have a single centralized source of streamlined data at the state. And that we'll be able to couple with the stream gauge network in order to have a better representation of the flow dynamics inside of each one of the major river basins throughout Michigan. Cindy, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I covered that well. I mean, just so people understand that, right now we have several different streamline layers that can be utilized within GIS open data through Eagle. And so it just creates confusion as to which one to use. And so kind of really creating a single source of information for that is something that we're trying to work on. And we added Megan Cameron recently from our group to the project team at TTNB and that are working on trying to sort that out and create a single layer that can then be integrated with the federal information.
One clarification. So when you're saying streamline, you mean the stream channel?
No, the GIS data set that represents the streams as we understand them inside of the state.
But it represents the stream channel.
Yeah, so bed banks and flow, if that's where we're going with that.
Right, well, because the streamline is perpendicular to contour.
Right.
Contour lines.
Well, sometimes if it's connected, right? Like, so.
No, but I just want to clarify what you mean by streamline.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I meant primarily. One of the facets of the project is that there's gonna be a mechanism through which essentially Eagle and State of Michigan, potentially DNR staff will be able to flag these things for ground truthing. I think that's one of the things that the federal partners have been looking for from us to be able to support, is that we'd be able to go out and collect that information according to a certain standard, and then be able to provide that feedback back to the national data set. Yeah,
This is within the 3-depth program.
yeah,
Okay.
yep, yes, it is.
So Michigan leads, kind of one of the lead states in the country on the acquisition of high accuracy LiDAR. And then they're generating a new national hydrography data set based on that LiDAR. That's what the 3-depth acronym stands for. So it's great to hear that. Yeah, starting to integrate those different things, yeah.
Yeah,
I'll just give my example of how important that is. Like we spent some time and effort, and money to try to use the LiDAR data to identify barriers in the rivers by using like algorithms that if over a 30-meter increment down a streamline and you notice that the elevation drops by a foot, 2 foot, that's not normal over 30 yards or so, right? But because of the inaccuracy of the streamline, which tells you where to pull the LiDAR points, you very, and unfortunately too frequently, grab a stream bank. So you get a ton of false elevation. So really cool stuff's possible, but with the LiDAR, but not until like the streamline gets really good. So
well,
minor deviation, but thank you.
yeah, well, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to share that. This is actually, we're kind of coming to the party a little late. To be honest, I think the other groups inside Eagle and inside the state of Michigan have been working on this for about a year or so already. And so even though we're coming in a little bit late, they've been gracious enough to give Megan the access that she needs in order to participate fully and align it with the work that happens inside of the water use program. But then also the benefit of coming a little late to the party is that we'll have the data products sooner rather than later. So it's not like this is a 5-year, right? Looking for that silver lining, right? Well, it's not a 5-year off data product potentially. It's something maybe within the next year that we might be able to have access to.
Yeah, and I put the information, there's a webpage with some of the project information, so I put a link to that in the meeting chat if folks are interested in it.
And so then alongside the work to kind of organize the streamlines and organize ourselves around the available technologies, we're also going to be building out that stream gauge network. We're trying to coordinate that internally so that we can use the monitoring to the maximum extent, right? Like not necessarily just inside of the water use program, but then make those usable for all the programs, right? Like if we do a good job of placing these stream gauges, essentially they should be useful for multiple different programs inside of Eagle. So that's kind of the goal with that one. And then the groundwater monitoring network, you guys have all heard of now multiple times, I'm sure. And really it's the same goal, but then instead of focusing on stream basins, it's the aquifers, right? Both glacial and bedrock that are able to provide water resource information. And then one of the things that we'll do once we have that information is try to organize it, right? Like we're trying to step through it. First you collect the data and then you attempt to organize the data. One of the ways in which we're doing that is identifying our data gaps. So we had partnered with MGS to review all of the state available data sets, identify data gaps, and then come up with a plan for filling those data gaps, both in data collection and then also in terms of cost, right? Like, so that then Eagle can look at that and prioritize which data gaps make the most sense to collect and invest in. One of the other things that we're working on is we've partnered with a group down at Wayne State to develop a natural language processing software. So it's an NLM essentially, where they've been successful at essentially scraping the data out of analytical PDFs and boring log PDFs. So that if you have a scanned document, they can read it and they can pull out both the lithologic information and then also the analytic information from those respective pieces of data. One of the other things that we actually asked them to do is then extrapolate that out to the ability to co-locate or essentially georeference the sitemaps contained inside of those reports, right? So like, if I remember back to my early days of being a consultant, those were the important pieces of information, not just the analytical and the boring logs, but also the sitemaps. And a lot of the time that can help you identify exactly where you are in three-dimensional space, right? Like, and that ultimately is the goal of the information, is to create a three-dimensional data set for the geologic and analytic information inside of the data that is available inside of Eagle. Right now, we're starting with BEA reports and those in Wayne County, but the goal is to kind of grow from there, right? Like, this is kind of the test case to see how this is gonna go. They've already successfully been able to pull the boring log and analytic data, but we're trying to, see how the georeferencing goes. And then once we have that information, we'll be able to put it inside of the groundwater data management system that is being developed under Sydney's purview to organize all of Eagle's available geologic and analytic information, right? It's the groundwater data management system. So all of the information inside of Eagle that is groundwater related is being put into essentially like an EDD format and then put into a central database so that then it can be used, like the data products inside there can be used in a GIS environment so that, folks inside of Eagle can make the most informed decisions, right? If we have that information, it's nice to be able to share it from a centralized location. So, I don't know, Sydney, you want to add anything else for that one? No. Okay. The next category was modeling, assessment, and scientific research. We heard an update on the Michigan Hydrologic Framework already, and the associated integrated water management database. Just for everybody's understanding, the groundwater data management system is supposed to handle internal data sets, so Eagle data. The information or the integrated water management database is really focused on providing access in real time, if feasible, to externally hosted data sets, right? Like, that's kind of the delineation that we've been imagining, and trying to keep those separate. That way then, obviously these come with storage and maintenance costs, and doing that twice seems like a bit of a problem for those folks who are trying to maintain this work. But ultimately that's the idea there. The catchment scale accounting and downstream accounting projects are currently ongoing, and they were focused on looking at the catchment scale. So not the water management area scale, but like the larger river basin scale, accrual of, or mitigation really, of upstream depletions to downstream conditions, right? The idea that it was supposed to represent the idea that the water management area, while it's representative of a surface water basin, sometimes there can be more complex, deeper interactions in the way that changes to the water balance occur when we're talking about something in 3 dimensions instead of 2. And then Howard, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that one, but in terms of a summary.
Well, I guess it's also getting into the idea that in the current system, when water's accounted for, withdrawal, it takes it from the home watershed and the neighboring watersheds, but it doesn't take it downstream all the way to the lake. And so there was a question whether that water should be, right now it's 0, whether it should be 100% to the lake, keep it at 0, or there's some kind of factor in between where you would expect the signal to propagate downstream. And it's especially important for intermittent pumping where the regulations right now, we look at the maximum rate of withdrawal. But if you turn the pump on and off, as you move downstream, that peak can decline and the length of time that it's impacting is spread out. So the volume of water removed is the same, but the peak withdrawal is lower. And so it's a pair of projects looking at observations and then modeling to try to and get their hands around that a little bit better and inform the larger group.
Can I ask a couple of questions about that before we go on? I guess first, since, because we were just talking about it, to the downstream accounting. How do we avoid overcounting the impact of a withdrawal in an upstream section, in an upstream water management area to the impacts that are on a downstream area when you think about the kind of the way that we assumed, all right, here we're starting with a baseline with that has, this is how much flow is coming in from the upstream WMAs. This is how much existing, withdrawal there is. And we've taken that into account when we assume a certain amount for index flow and for, for all of our factors on flow for that downstream WMA. Then when you start putting in factors of this upstream withdrawal has an impact on the downstream water management area, and so does this withdrawal and that withdrawal. I mean, because some of the figures that I've seen show that, for instance, the St. Joe River, by the time it reaches the lake, has like hardly any water left in it, when we know that that's not true. And so how do we do a good assessment of downstream accounting without overcounting the impact of those withdrawals and not removing the factors that were kind of already assumed to be in place from the existing water levels that there were? How do we avoid that? St. Joe River has no water in it. St. Joe River has plenty of water in it.
That's exactly what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you do just straight accounting and you say, oh, we should be 100 CFS less than
Yeah.
it was 20 years ago, when we look at the record and say, it's not 100 CFS less.
Yeah.
That's the argument for not carrying the things all the way to the lake. But mass is conserved, so we expect some impact.
Right. We got to figure out
So-
how that has an impact, and so.
Right, so that's really the
Yeah.
question
Okay.
that the group at MSU is looking at.
Mhm.
MSU is looking at from a data standpoint, looking at the data that's there at wells that stream gauges that you expect to be impacted because there's a lot of use upstream, and then gauges also in the state that don't have a lot of impacts upstream, how they behaved over the last 20 years to see, maybe part of the missing water, or the reason the water's not missing is we've also had an increase in precip, so
Mhm.
average flows are a little bit higher everywhere, except here, the average flows aren't higher.
Mhm.
Maybe that's the explanation of why we're not seeing it.
Yeah.
And then our group's looking more just modeling standpoint, like total model land, we control everything.
Yeah.
What do you expect if you pump 3 days, turn it off, nice square wave, and then you go down a channel?
Yeah.
How much does the peak decline, how much does it spread over time?
Okay.
So that we could say, yeah, we're removing this volume, but instead of removing it in 12 hours, we're removing it in a day and a half. So we don't see 500 GPM of depletion, we see much lower depletion, and that gets into the noise of
Mhm.
the standard, uncertainty within the stream flow record.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that's just restating the question, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think
But that's what I wanted to know is, are you guys considering that?
That's my.
That's how motivated it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that, like, for the modeling, they're gonna start with that data, and then they're gonna change the things in the middle, right? In order, so that then they're able to honor the observations that we have. So if you're at the top end saying that, oh, by the time we get to the mouth of the St. Joe, it should be at 0, right? Like, then, maybe what's happening at the headwaters is the thing that actually needs to be recalibrated, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of how that works, is you have your observation data and then you fit the information that you have, your assumptions really in the interim in order to fit the observation data. So I think. you know,
What are the
short-
mitigating factors that help?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are no, like currently though, there are no background built-in like features that
Oh, no,
that
nothing,
take
nothing
into
in the,
account any of the.
nope, nothing in the
propagation.
model, just the assumptions of what state are we at right now?
Well, right, I mean, like from a policy perspective, we're at 0 downstream propagation of water withdrawals. And we know that we're all convinced that it's not 100% propagation. And this is about figuring out, can we convince ourselves what a reasonable actual number is? Because we know it's not 0.
Mhm.
We know it's not.
We know it's not 100, we know it's not 0.
But right now, it is like, it was an artifact of several limitations of our electronic tracking.
Yeah.
But we're doing none, right? So if you get to 20% of base flow in this segment, it just goes from 500 CFS down to 480. At the next boundary, you just still assume that it received the same 500 it's always got. So there is like the policy right now is definitely protective of not over assuming any propagation downstream. And we're trying to figure out like that also doesn't completely honor what the statute does, but until we can convince ourselves of the reasonable midpoint somewhere, we're doing that.
And there can be additions too that need to be taken into account. So it's not all completions, there's some additions. So this is trying to put it all together.
The other question I had, thank you guys for answering that. The other question I had was about the data and how you're going to kind of separate out your databases into Eagle held data and outside data. Are you concerned at all about like missing the opportunity to combine that data when you need better information about a particular location? I mean, like I see that being a big problem of, oh, I've looked through all of this data that we have. And here's what our answer should be. And then somebody pointing out, by the way, there's this whole data set sitting out here in the publicly accessible database that you guys didn't even look at.
Yes, I want to go with yes.
Okay.
But I think it's one of those things where on our side of things, as we work to integrate these individual databases, that then we'll be able to do that like at the user point, right? Like point of access to that information, right? Like, so that groundwater data management system is not something that Eagle staff as a whole will be able to have access to, but it's actually the GIS data products that come out of the database, right? Like just for security's sake, there's going to be a series of folks that are able to access the data and then the majority will not. But then they will help kind of provide access to the information contained in the database. And so then from a user's perspective, for example, you would have a GIS online account right through the state. You would load your information from the groundwater data management system. You would load your information from the integrated water management database. And then from a user's perspective, essentially you would have one overlaid set of that same information. So say it was like groundwater data or whatever else, soil data. Like the user would see a single set of information that would be available at the point of the user, as opposed to actually going into each one of those individual databases to actually see anything. So it's not like.
Okay, and so
It
we'll,
was seamless.
Hopefully,
I mean,
fingers crossed.
that's the intention.
so then an external user, like a consultant or hydrologist or somebody would be able to do the same thing. They'd be able to see the GIS products from
Yeah.
Eagle's data as well as what was in the
Yeah, I mean,
integrated database.
that's the
Again,
idea,
it's fully
right?
integrated, so
Okay.
that when you're trying to get information from the Michigan Natural
Okay.
Framework, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. You're accessing whatever's available.
All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. These are the kind of questions I get, like, how are they making sure that they're not doing this thing that seems obvious afterwards, but then you may not have figured it out while you were working on it?
So my whole day.
The distinction she was trying was really internal one, so how they're.
Yeah.
managing
Yeah.
data. It's not what the user's saying.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Yeah. Sorry,
Awesome.
it just helps my own brain because I was also struggling with that same question that your folks were also then posing to you. And so I suppose I'm giving you my own perspective on like, this is what we're doing. So,
Right?
But yeah.
Okay, so if it works, that's how it's gonna work. All right, and we want it to work.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's gonna work.
Yes.
So,
I know too many of people who work in IT to just be able to say with confidence, it's gonna work, but we hope it works.
I feel that in my heart, actually. So,
All right, thanks.
Uh, we also have the Aquifer Properties, data layer update that we've already talked about now a couple of times, right? There's gonna be an update to the storage property and an update to the transmissivity property. And then the map that I chose to share this time was the percentage of unconfined wells, which was one of the intermediary data products that they were using to find the water management area that will be classified essentially as unconfined water management areas. So that they can categorize them and apply the appropriate storage parameter to those water management areas. One of the other things, in addition to potentially reevaluating the map on the back end and the appropriateness of how we're conceptualizing effective properties, is to be able to use the cleaned up WellLogic data set. One of the other projects that didn't quite make this presentation, but had been happening over the last several years, was the locational update of the WellLogic data set on which these estimates are based. Basically, the MGS had written a script to help identify the location of wells that are not properly placed, and they were able to locate them with a little bit greater accuracy. They actually just finished that project, and so are going to help us now with something else. But this data set now uses that cleaned up data inside of WellLogic, and then also includes all of the additional information that has been added since the original estimate was made. Which that date is gonna escape me, but I know it was over a decade or so ago.
Well over it.
Yeah, well over a decade, closer to 2 decades, thank you, Dave. So all of the additional wells that have been added into the WellLogic data set have now been included in these estimates, so it's more complete. The data is more accurate. And then, it sounds like we get to have some additional discussion on how those estimates should be finalized, which I look forward to actually. And then the final one is the transition probability evaluation, which where we have possession of those final data products, evaluating whether or not transition probability is a viable solution for estimating large scale quaternary properties. But then at the end of the day, we're still kind of working through what that recommendation ultimately will look like inside of the models committee. I pulled this one out, even though it falls under the scientific research category, just because it's one that both Simon had touched on and that will be continuing to expand. There's a couple of projects, one happening inside of MGS and then one happening with the Great Lakes Governors and Purveyors group, where they're looking at long-term water forecasting in right now 7 counties and the western part of Michigan. You can see there, as I just stated, that we're really focusing on looking at the long-term trends of water availability. That's a group that Emily and I had a chance to meet with that is comprised of both U of M, University of Ohio and Illinois research teams. And they're working to finalize that data product now. One of the next topics that we've been supporting is our research into water conservation. I know there's a couple of other projects that I'm excited to be a part of. Really, we have the conservation and the agricultural practices, but I chose to maybe spotlight in this photo the report that had been shared with the council from the Alliance for Water Efficiency, just because, those are things that we're going to pull from in terms of best management practices as we continue to work with the Office of the Great Lakes to develop kind of those BMP recommendations that will ultimately live on our website for public review and consumption. The next group is the water withdrawal and impact assessment. So we have the stream flow depletion project, which we had a summary on earlier, so I don't know if I'll spend too much time kind of going into the weeds on that one. But then we also have the inland lakes and sensitivity ARI framework project, where essentially we're going to be working next summer with a group out at the Powell Center. It's multi-state, so Eagle, I think it's Wisconsin, and then folks from within the USGS and Trout Unlimited will all be out in Colorado to kind of, I come up with an idea on how to better incorporate the water inside of both wetland areas and lakes in that conceptualization for the way that we regulate and understand the water balance, right? Like one of the things that we're doing inside of the water withdrawal assessment tool is we're trying to evaluate those impacts specifically to stream surface water bodies, but that doesn't necessarily incorporate all of those other surface hydrologic features that exist that potentially could be seeing an impact. So we'll be working on that next year. And I think, let's see, oh, and then the water withdrawal assessment tool modernization project, which you all have heard now several times. Release one, which occurred in September of 2025, updated the back end and the front end of the water withdrawal assessment tool, making available the Hunt 99 solution using the PICAP code. Release 2, which happened earlier this year in February, made public those other solutions. So both Hunt 2003 and Dudley Ward and Low, and I maybe left actually. I've been corrected now several times and my brain will not update it. But they're now both publicly available for whoever wants to use them, alongside the ability for folks to send in collected data. So if you have someone who thinks that we should have been using a different transmissivity, they're welcome to send that in, or if they've got information showing that maybe a different storage parameter should be used, they're more than welcome to send that in. That could even include just additional boring log information showing that maybe the soil characterization isn't what we're seeing in our publicly available data sets, right? So, I mean, I think the worst thing that could happen is we stick with the information as we currently have it. So if anybody is listening that does any of this stuff, I would recommend just sending whatever you have. And, you know, the worst thing that can happen is what will happen anyway. So in terms of additional information being reviewed. And then we have the release 3 that will happen in early 2027, where we're incorporating the water use reporting and invoicing systems inside of that same framework, even though it'll have its own portal. So it's not like you'll go into the lot to do reporting or invoicing. It'll just kind of live for our own reference, point of reference, in the same system for Eagle. I think that actually might be it. Yep, that was it. So, I know it's a lot of projects. Emily had originally asked for a flow chart, but to be honest with you, it was not feasible. So, I know, it would have been the craziest red string flow charts. So, yeah, oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I did spend some time trying to figure out how each one of those things would kind of feed into each other. But I mean, really the takeaway is that a lot of the work is complementary, right? Like, we work really hard to try to make sure that the projects aren't overlapping. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we do anticipate that they'll be able to support one another as we move forward into a new data landscape. So.
So thank you. It's a lot to keep track of, and that's a good thing, because there was a long period of years where there was not much going on at all. And the fact that we're at a point where there's so much work being done to take those steps to keep the program going is really good. And it's really great that we have to kind of sort of joke about keeping track of it, flow charts and categorizing it. That means that we're getting there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Graham, because when we look at what we had proposed in the 2020, all of that work is being finished. So we will have that done this year. And then the 22 and 24, that is now underway. It's taken a while, but it's all underway now. So I feel really good about that.
Any thoughts or comments? Okay. going over to a bleaker topic. Funding updates. It looks like we had given space here for Sarah or Adam. If they're here, one of them is on virtually and they'd like to. If not, we can hatch it together in the room with intelligent guesses. I don't think anybody has any real answers, so intelligent guesses are as good as anybody's gonna give.
I know Adam is down in the salt mines at the moment, so he's not gonna be available to give you an update.
Wait, like literally?
Yeah, literally, he's down in the salt mines. Not joking. I'm just man, he didn't take me with him, actually. I'm putting that on the record.
As well you should be. I would love to take a tour of the salt mines, and the fact that he did not take you, I think you should just brag him endlessly about
I
that.
can't wait to share that with him.
Very good. I'll give
but-
space, breathing room here, either for Lena or Dave, anybody who feels like they're plugged in to speculate. But I'll start and just say that, reminder is the Senate has a budget, the House has a budget, they're very different. And sometime between now and October, hopefully, they'll be working on compromising and coming up with a budget. And I think I would encourage anybody, if you have good information, insider information, or just good optimism, to share that with the group. But in reality, sometime in the next several weeks, month, hopefully not many months, but sometime in there, we'll find out how those two chambers and the governor's office come up with compromises to make a budget. I don't think I could give you my speculation, but it doesn't matter because it's not going to be accurate or
But
good.
does either one have any funding for things that we're interested in?
Yep, and no, I mean, some, yeah, on a high level, there are some.
We have yes, no, and
There's the
some.
full spectrum. So not to get into specifics, because I don't have them all in front of me, but there is all of the permutations. There are some where there's money, there are some where there's money, but not nearly enough. There are some where there's a placekeeper with a $0 or a $1 next to it, and there are places where there's kind of severe cuts and dramatic cuts. So yes, to all of the scenarios that you could imagine across a lot of the buckets that we all.
So we'll be thinking about this things.
There'll be a lot of negotiations and discussions.
Yeah.
I don't have information about this program, but at least the Department of Natural Resources was looking at possibly a budget coming out in July, which is much earlier than last year, but you never know. It's like Brian said, it could be September, but there's hope unless it happens in July.
Legislators have a couple things on their minds come November, so I would think they'd have every incentive to get the budget done early.
Nothing much to add from what Brian said. There's just, there's a wide gulf there between the two ends of the Capitol building over here. We'll just have to see what comes with all of the probably last minute stuff. It's gonna be.
The good news that I would tell everybody, that I tell my members when they ask, is in this case, they do have to come up with a compromise. So, sometimes that's hard to achieve lately with policy of bills, but in the case of a budget, they're gonna have to find compromise. So, to be determined, and if any of you have pet projects and priorities, whether it's this, other things, like I would encourage you to get to work trying to plant whatever seeds of motivation or inspiration you have in the next 3 weeks. Not wait much longer if you're going to try to advocate for something. Good. Good enough. I wasn't on this, so I was trying to film it. All right. Good, let's keep moving. Actually, let me ask everybody, it is 2:45. We're doing exceptionally well. We have one meaty thing left, which is the Prairie River update with Jay. We could slide right into that, no problem. Or because we never do and we're doing well, we could take a 10-minute break, either to do bio breaks, drinks, there's water, there's coffee, there's actually snacks. And you can actually have some dialogue, which we never allow until after the meeting. Does that sound, a 10-minute sound good or bad?
I mean, I'd love to keep rolling. We've got folks who are real anxious to hear the Prairie River update.
Are they going?
It's not a long report.
All right, I thought I would offer. Sounds like we're rolling. Jay, I'm gonna leave it to you. Floor's yours and you, it's up to you whether you want to kind of get through it, take a bunch of questions, or whether you want any during it. It's your call.
Yeah, either or, it's not a long presentation, so I'll get through it quick and we can discuss it. So back again, about 4 years ago, we're talking about the Prairie River here. This is the Prairie River in Branch County, kind of by the Indiana-Michigan border, around Coldwater, Bronson area, because there are a couple other prairies in the state. So with this particular one, we're talking about a stream temperature classifications change. And if you want to learn more about that, it's in Special Report 55, or you can talk to one of the co-authors who's sitting right beside me. We can discuss how the relationship between stream temperature classification and different fish communities and how a fish community can change from water withdrawals, which could basically affect stream temperature as well. So DNR is involved in making the change, coming up with the recommendation. Because of that, we developed an internal policy of how we're gonna do that. But essentially, the DNR director has authority to make that change. So Fish Division does the reviews, makes the recommendation to Eagle, they concur, then we'll go to the director to make that change. Right now, we're using the Natural Resource Commission process as public review. So it usually comes to the NRC as information 1 month and decision the next month. Okay.
Jay, as you're talking about the NRC, have you heard a schedule yet of when the director wants to bring that up at the NRC and then finalize the
No,
recommendations?
this information's starting to get out now. We did talk about it at the data committee yesterday, and I'm gonna kind of gauge how people feel after today of whether we need more time to go out with the public or not. But normally fisheries orders come in around August. And with decisions September or so. So that's kind of a normal cycle.
So Jay, you said information 1 month and next month, you said, so the director would announce the decision.
Yeah.
That would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or defer, or, I mean, they could table it.
Sure.
If there's reason to. So,
There's a quick reminder process wise for it. So it's not exactly 2 months, right? It kind of is. It gets noticed for information on the agenda on the website at least several weeks before that meeting. Everybody at that meeting can show up, testify, say your comments for 3 to 5 minutes, depending on whether you sign up or not. They kind of let everybody talk, but it's time limited. And then they'll have a little discussion about it. Then it immediately goes up on the next month's agenda for action. Again, people can show up on the beginning part of that and give testimony. Then it's at the end of that the final part of the meeting after public testimony, the second opportunity, they'll take action. So it kind of gives, maybe not exactly 2 months, but it sort of gives 2 opportunities for the public to catch on, see it, and say, testify.
thanks for that clarification. So the different classification types, we basically have 4 temperatures that range from cold to warm, and then different stream sizes that go to a stream to a large river. And if you're interested in the cutoffs between the different temperatures, there's this table describes that. So go ahead. So where people are very interested in it is based on what stream type you are and stream size. There's a certain amount or percentage of the reduction of the index flow that's allowed. And it really gets meaty when you start getting into zone D for that. So there's not a whole lot of difference between warm, cool, or cold in terms of the percent reduction you can have, but the cold transitional is the bugger because there's much less amount of water that can be reduced from those systems without having a big impact on the fish community. So,
Could I just go ahead? So I think the background of this is really fascinating, because when we went into developing this whole system, we were looking at cold, cold, and warm. That was it. So it was a 3 temperature range. But as we're going through the data, as the fisheries team was looking at it, it was clear there was another range of data that's really critical, and that was cold transitional. And that's that it has the attributes of a cold stream, but it is very close to kicking over to a cool stream. And so separate out because of how sensitive it was. But the legislature really picked up on that. And when they said, you mean that could wipe out drought, and it makes a difference whether drought are gonna be there or not. So it got their attention. And so they gave it the very strict range that we see there. So it's something that came out from this work that was scientifically developed, that it is a real range, and it is really sensitive.
Thank you. So next. So a little background how we got here. GNR does random surveys throughout the state, just happened to randomly pick the prairie and went in there and found trout. We hadn't stocked the system since the late 90s. So it was a bit of a surprise to us. And once we started looking at what we found there and how that stream is classified, we started to ask questions and gather more data. So prairie right now is classified as warm, and we saw quite a few trout there. So there's a mismatch. We collected quite a bit of data, 2012 through 2016, went back and did various fish surveys, mostly at Orland and Bowers Roads. Ran it through the stream check tool. That's a Excel spreadsheet developed by Ellie Gulati. She was at MSU at the time. Developed that to characterize fish and temperature to a specific classification. The information we had at the time, the fish were basically classified as cold, the temperature is cold transitional. So we had made a recommendation for management, water management area 2781 to go cold from warm to cold transitional. Basically took it through the NRC process. This is the very first one that we had done. We heard a lot of public feedback from that, concerns that we didn't have enough data throughout the system. We were basically looking at one little section of that stream. And obviously going to cold transitional is a huge change and has a huge impact on the amount of water that can get withdrawn from that management area. So our interim director at the time decided to collect 3 more years of data on Prairie River. So that's where we are now. So go ahead, next slide. So I'll be briefly going over the summary of the data. We used a third party, Kaiser Associates out of Kalamazoo, to collect the temperature and air temperature data, stream temperature as well. We received annual reports from them, supplied them to whoever was interested at the time as they came out, and then their final report just came out a little over a month ago. So next slide. So hard to see in this slide, but the station 1 is in the upper part of the watershed, the headwaters, and the number 5, which is on the left of my screen facing forward here, is station number 5. And that's very close to the lower end of the water management area where the index flow is calculated. So we basically have five stations that we tried to select through there. They are close to road crossings for convenience, just so you know. So go ahead. Next one. So what we did, we'll go over the stream check tool temperatures and what classifications that came up with. You'll see that the data is very variable from upstream to downstream, as well from year to year. So I was interested in looking at a different way of summarizing it. So I just took all the July stream temperatures from all sites and all years, combined them and looked at the mean just to see where that would go. And we have the stream check tool for fish as well. Go ahead. So I showed up pretty small on this screen, but here's the results from the stream check tool. The table on the top is from just raw data evaluation, just basically taking the July mean for each one of those sites in each of the years. The bottom table is what we call the conservative model, and it weights the data a little bit differently based on its current designation. So it kind of pulls the classification closer to warm, kind of suggesting that you need really good, a big change to suggest a change in water classification. I've mainly focused on the raw data. So if you look at, we got from Walker Road down to Brink Road. You can see that from the headwaters, Walker Road stays pretty consistent warm. It's basically receiving water from a lake, which probably keeps it warm. But what's interesting is that you start to move downstream in the watershed, it seems to be gaining groundwater. The water does cool off and goes into a cold transitional section, and then it starts to warm up to what we look at as cool. 2025 was relatively warm and dry, and you can see how that affected it, and the whole system was either classified as warm or cool at all 5 sites. So tough to determine. It's not clear slam dunk, but I think there's enough evidence to show that it's not warm, that it's more cool than what we haven't classified now. This is what brought up a lot of conversation in the data committee is you have multiple sites and there is variability. You know, what's the best representative site there? Do you take something lower in the water management area or something in the middle, or combine the 5 like I tried to do in a analysis you'll see next. So when you do combine all sites for all years, that combined to be over 22,000 temperature measurements. And that July mean was 68.89, which classifies as a cool. So that's, look at the whole system as at once, that's what you come up with. So go ahead. Won't spend much time on the fish data. I did, all this did is confirm that trout are still there. We saw over 247 trout in 2024 at Orland Road. This is a site that is within that area of the stream that's gaining groundwater, or it's just downstream from that. I would put more, influence on the fish data if we had fish data for all 5 sections, but we don't. And so I'm just really concentrated on what we see in the July meetings. Go ahead. But if you do characterize it, 33%, according to the stream check tool, 33% the biomass is cold water fish there, and 29% by number is cold there. So the fish community, at least at that site, is more on the cold side. But we do have representative species that, like darters and things, that would be more cool, and even suckers and bullheads that would be more warm. So, go ahead. So basically, right now, the stream is warm. The options that I have to go forward to the director is basically not go forward to the director, make no change and have it stay warm. My biologists are interested in seeing a change and have it move in the direction to what we're actually seeing in the temperature and the fish. So the most recent data and the recommendation I would give is to move it to cool. And that would also match up with the downstream water management area that is also cool. Go ahead. And this is the last slide, just showing that there's not much change going from a warm to a cool. You actually get one extra percent, in terms of the reduction of index flow before we enter into zone D. So it doesn't change the use a whole lot there, but I think it does provide a classification that's more of what we're seeing there with the data. That's what we got.
What station did you take all the fish samples from?
It would correlate, can you go back to, the tables that had the different? So it'd be closer to that, Station 4, Orland Road.
Okay.
So the two fish samples we had were basically between 4 and Section 3. Or Station 3. What's interesting is upstream from there, is where some active channelization's going on, or has been going on. And I think that is somewhat artificially connecting the stream channel to the groundwater. And so we're getting more gaining or groundwater through that section than normally would or what would naturally. And I've seen that quite often in channelized systems.
Being channelized closer to Station 1, what's it with?
It's downstream of the headwaters, probably starts around Station 2. Station on, Station 1 is channelized as well, but was not actively channelized.
It does make me curious about something. You said that that channelization that might have dropped stream bed elevation, made it maybe more in connection with groundwater, popped up relatively modern times. I thought you said the other day. What time period did that happen?
I think it was during, maybe a year or two.
Of this 3-year study, right?
If
So-
Todd Beach is on, he knows the exact date.
What's the nature of what, just curious, what significant channelization was permitted and allowed on the river? In the last couple of years. Usually we don't
Good
foster
question.
that in regulations.
This was a designated drain prior to 1972. So they can dredge without permitting. And there's often dredging, not only within this water management area, but further downstream all the way to Burr Oak.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Other questions?
I think Todd has his hand raised.
All right, thank you for letting me see that. Todd, go ahead.
Thank you. So the dredging that actually happened, we first started doing monitoring in 2023 out there for temperature logging. The dredging of that section right there near Slisher Road happened the month before temperature loggers went in. So June of the first year. And so we actually were asked to work in the area as well. At the same time, our stations alternated between Kaiser and Associates. And our logger, we had a temp logger set right at Slisher and then one downstream of it. And we actually did see the drop in stream temperature. It was gaining from the headwaters downstream consistently every year, except for that section where it was dredged. And that was done by the Branch County Drain Commissioner. And it does it every so often. There's a number of surface water withdrawals right in that stretch also. And that's helping those out. I would also add with the work that Jay had just presented on for the last 4 years now, we've been working out there as well. We had 12 temperature loggers out there. We ran 50 streaming connectivity tests. We took 86 discharge measurements and we had 11 gain loss surveys. So we had quite a bit of data that we had talked about before with Jay, and for what it's worth, the work that we did also supports that designation of a cool stream. So it's a pretty robust data set. We do agree with the assessment, that's been shared today for sure. Jay, if I can put you on the spot, you put me on the spot yesterday. If I can put you on the spot a minute, the temperature loggers that were used were those onset I think they're 20s. Do you know how those were installed in the stilling stations that Kaiser and Associates used? Because we have used those same ones and we know that they float. So is there some detail about how those were used out in the stream?
Yeah, I asked Mark Kaiser, so they were tethered to a stainless steel cable and pushed down the stilling tube. So the cable itself weighted them down to the bottom of the tube.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
For other questions? Discussion, thoughts? I'll maybe try to generate some. So this is important, both for the Prairie River and water users and the cold water fisheries there, but it's also a precedent setter for stream reclassification. And a quick reminder is in statute, it doesn't say much about the details of how to go about doing that. It more or less said a stream could be reclassified with approval by the Natural Resource Commission. I think it's just about that big.
Yeah, that's just about it. That's it.
That's what we struggled with too.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much there, so, and then the reason that it's director is the past, it's been repeatedly analyzed by lawyers or the AG's office that a past executive order done during the Granholm administration, amongst a lot of stuff, switched it over to the DNR director. Not a lawyer, I don't understand how the statute still says one thing and it's somehow different, but so that there it is, it's sort of directors. It was the commission just because it was public noticed, it was clear. That's, Dave can correct me, you're in the rooms, but we chose kind of the commission because it's noticed online every month. It's monthly meetings, it can't sneak by anybody that's, looking for them and interested. But this is kind of, how much information is convincing enough that we want to accept this versus an original prediction. But there's a lot of subcomponents of it. So the data committee's conversation the other day was not so focused in kind of continuing to spend a lot of time on what it is for the sake of the prairie, but spending more time on this for the sake of learning from Todd's work and the department's work in a particular place, and what can we say about, and it may be nothing, but do we want to make recommendations for what the process looks like, or should minimally, require, do we have guidance that we'd like to, following most likely time-wise after this decision by the director? I think that's worth our time going, do we want to recommend any more meat on the bones or changes to this process? So you can expect that the data committee is going to, continue after this, bring some thoughts and ideas here eventually. We won't work on it in time for this because we're kind of focused on the report that's due coming up really quick, but we're not going to let go of it. So we'll continue to do some deeper analysis and see if we have guidance that we think we should do.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for bringing that up because that is important, kind of taking a lesson learned and looking at, DNR did do good work updating kind of their internal protocol for how they were going to do this, the monitoring in time to be able to do this work on the prairie. What can we take from the prairie and use that to both, make changes as needed to DNR's internal protocol, but also maybe help to parse out, since it's based pretty heavily on the USGS protocol, like there's a lot of language in the USGS protocol. I know you didn't write it, Howard, so I'm looking at you just because you are the representative of the USGS and next to me. Is that there's a whole lot of, and the field staffer shall use professional judgment to figure out how to make this work. And so how can we translate that into something that's usable for DNR for a future contractor? You know, the next time we have a stream classification, you know, for temperature changing, because it's gonna happen. It'll happen probably a bunch of times.
We appreciate, more discussion with data committee. I think the big lesson learned is we were taking one station prior to this. And now seeing this section of prairie, how variable it is. You know, what if we took that measurement up higher in the watershed, it would have set warm and we wouldn't even pursue anything. So, I think once you maybe get one data hit that something's not right, you know, the right thing to do is add more meters out there and try to figure it out. But they all, agree with each other with one, temperature regime, then you're probably sitting pretty good. But when you start to see that variability, then I wonder where do you take the temperature, or how do you analyze that information to know what's the best temperature regime? So I think a lot of discussion should happen, and if the data committee could come up with some recommendations to follow, I think we would definitely follow.
So I think there's a lot of things to look at, what you've done with what Todd has done. So I think there's a lot of interest in doing that. But I think also that in looking at this, I didn't see anything. I don't think anybody in the data committee said, so I said, your conclusion is way off base. I mean, we felt comfortable with it based on the presentations. So I think, you know, there's comfort in that, but I think it's also just saying there's food for thought for, you know, what is the best approach and how do we statistically better analyze things and what are things that we should look at? So that I think we feel comfortable with what you've done. And we're just looking for, are there other ways that we should look at it, maybe streamline it or whatever, but to improve the next time comes up, what can be done?
And I think that even though I mean, some of the fish stuff, we rarely get to talk fish here, so I'll take my opportunity. We kind of know that some of this cool category definitely supports cold water fish. There are parts of the Asable system that have a July mean temperature that are 68, 69 degrees, whether we like that or not, that support good fisheries. That cut off at like 68, where we called it cool, really what we found in other DNR research is that you can support pretty shrinking, but significant trout fisheries up until about 71. July mean average temperature, maybe 72. But and there's really good stuff that went into here, but it is normal to find cold water fisheries in a cool classified segment. So if that isn't immediately like controversial based on the terminology, it sounds like, well, it's a cool water fishery because it's a cool stream. But we do know that some of the original, this is really getting deep, but some of the original designations and the definitions in the statute are about like characteristic or thriving fish populations, which have connotations to numbers of standard deviations above state averages. And so it's one of the reasons that line is colder. Cool begins at a colder temperature than you actually see cold water fish drop out. It just means that they can be at state average or slightly below state average numbers in a cool segment. So that helps, like, it's not inconsistent to find cold water fish on cool segments.
Particularly with so many tributaries that they can rush up into if the water starts getting too warm in the main channel.
Todd, go ahead, Todd.
Thank you. One of these days I gotta make it up there in person so I can quit raising my hand. One of the points I think that we talked about yesterday in the data collection committee that I think is really important is that we've got temperature data out there and we've got one fish study, you know, that the DNR was looking at as their data set. But I think we talked about the robustness of being able to add other pieces to the puzzle rather than relying on just a couple. And the gain loss surveys, the stream bed connectivity, or even additional stations, and even the geologic cross sections. all of those are really pieces of this puzzle that help make that determination, so that the different data sets aren't siloed from each other. There's a lot of validity in doing that work. You're already out there to install these loggers. It's a minimal cost to collect some more of that additional data, and it provides a much more complete picture of the entire system. So it was just one of the things we talked about yesterday that I wanted to make sure we said in front of the council. It's kind of a simple but important concept of taking a look at what is the useful data that we can collect to help understand the system better. And that helps us do a better job of classifying them as well.
Any other questions about this? Not seeing any.
Yeah,
Megan,
Jay, when you decided to collect more data, just thinking about the big picture budget, like, did you have to go into or get a special appropriation to do this funding, or were you able to find it in the existing DNR budget? I'm just curious about that and like what that might look like in the future, because some of the budgets that have come out, at least House versions for you, have been terrible lately.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to ask for more appropriations for that. So we had a combination of things. We have some, what we call gift accounts, where sometimes people pass away, give us some significant amount of money. And so we look for specific projects for that. So part of this was paid for by that. Part of it was from David Fish dollars, which are fishing license fees. But it worries me that if we have to do, while we're doing the analysis, that doesn't take too much, but if we're paying for more data collection, then
Yeah.
in the future, I may ask this group to help us get some ongoing funding, whatever that was.
Who's going with it, like, I wouldn't want
This
to
was
like,
like $60,000 for 3
could
years.
we need more collection in the future? It's kind of a bad situation to be in, scrambling or something like that. So like thinking about the report and our recommendations, like, just seems like that should be something available if needed.
Yeah, I'd like to have those conversations.
did you say it was 60,000 for the 3 years or 60,000 a year for each of?
Total for the 3 years.
Okay. Okay. That's one of the things that I think when to me, I work on a shoestring, right? My budget starts at 0 every year too, so I get it. We need to make sure that we're accurate, but I also do have an eye on what is the sort of minimal required to be more convincing than the original prediction. And I'm always for pilot data as long as somebody's paying. But in this case, right, that's 2,300 anglers license contributions that went into this. And so I do want us to think through that. You know, there's always going to be the ideal. I love doing projects like that too, but I also go, how do I get this done in a reasonable, professional manner on a shoestring? And I think that's one of my goals in us talking about guidance. It's just, it can be any of us. In this case, it was you that stumbled upon, the department that stumbled upon trout sitting in a warm classified stream, but it can be us. I know we have some. It can be one of your members. And so like, I know there's always like, hey, we want just a pile, like the best study of all time, but that has a real cost. And so I want us to be sensitive to that standard. Not seeing anything else. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Brian,
Appreciate
sorry, if I may interrupt for just a second. I get the fishing license thing too, but one of the other things that we don't want to forget is spending $60,000 to get it right over a 3-year period. 100-acre farm, that's irrigated in that area. You change their designation and all of a sudden they can't water or they can't expand. And you're talking tens of millions, of dollars spread throughout that basin. Each one of those growers is looking at $1 million loss overnight as well. So just to put that into scope and comparison of the importance of getting it right, because the impact of that of getting it wrong is really large. That has an immediate impact on people. Immediate impact. They can't farm the way they are without access to that water. So if we're going to restrict it, we better be certain that we've got it right. Just for context.
I hear you, and I'll leave the full blossoming about burdens of evidence and stuff for another time. I hear you. All right, well, we'll move on to meeting dates. We had a brief discussion earlier about the next one in August. So you'll have one more here where we give you July off. And then we're gonna move into that period where we're every month. So the next one's in August 11th, and it will be out at MSU. You heard about the 10 o'clock to noon and then the noon lunch, and then we'll start with our meeting being on MSU campus. Look for more information to come out on that, plus a link to register if you're gonna attend the demo part. After that, it'll be September 8th, then October 13th, and then November 10th. And those will all be moving into kind of report conversations, I believe, about progress, everything we're implementing, and then any new recommendations. So anything coming and arising out of a committee then has to come here. We typically like to also do like, I guess, that NRC process of for information. I'm not one that likes to dump a new subject and a new recommendation and ask your vote opinion on the same meeting. I don't think that's fair to anybody. That's not good process. So that's why we're gonna have monthly, and everybody will get to hear about a subject at least once before a little bit more discussion and a conversation about whether we have consensus on it. With that, I will close that section and move into the open comments, where anybody here is invited to give any thoughts or comments about anything that doesn't have to be on the agenda. Or it doesn't have to be an agenda item based. Would anybody like to give any open comments? It's online.
I was gonna tell you Pat's online, but you were already on a roll, so
I figured if I stopped and asked if Pat wanted to try to chair virtually, that you would say you're doing fine. Hopefully that was okay with you, Pat.
You're good. Keep going. Thanks.
Not seeing any open comments and knowing that we do not have quorum, although we did get to 8, so we were only one shy. I don't need to accept a motion to adjourn. So as chair, I will say thank you for your attendance today. We are adjourned, and please enjoy a glass of water, a cup of coffee, or the snacks that Eagle did provide.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for doing that.
Thanks.
News that we selfishly were using, was waiting for Jake and I could go at a public meeting. And they wanted to. And he says the.
Well, because my daughter's